Good morning. I'm Rose Trout, and I head a Alzheimer's support group here in New Smyrna Beach, and I also head one up in Ormond. And I'd like to introduce you today to one of my people that come to my group on a regular basis. His name is Brian, and Brian has early onset Alzheimer's. And we're going to talk today about what's going on with Brian and how he feels about what's happening. Good morning, Brian.
Hi, Rose. How are you? My name is Brian Gilmartin, and I'm originally from New York, born and raised in New York City. I'm here today with my wife, who chooses not to be on camera. And we are married now for 47 years. It's going to be 48 years, 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and we've had a wonderful life together. And I am a retired attorney, and that plays into the story because several years ago, I had a double knee replacement, and that is really the start of my journey in terms of the real awareness that there was a problem. My 2 knee surgeries were successive because I have a pacemaker, so they were separated by about 3 months. And the bottom line of that was that I was very heavily medicated, lots of anesthesia for the 2 procedures. I had no pain whatsoever as a result of the anesthesias that were administered to me, and that was wonderful. But about 3 months after the second procedure, I had what you can only describe as a mental, not a mental breakdown, but a cognitive memory breakdown. And the most incredible part of that was I had lost the ability to focus on things. My mind would wander, and the most dramatic example of it was I could no longer drive a car, because if I was driving a car and I saw a billboard, I would look at the billboard and I would start reading the billboard and completely forget the fact that I was driving the car. Obviously very dangerous. I had personality issues. I became very difficult to live with. Very aggressive, I guess. Argumentative, not aggressive, that's physical. Argumentative. And my wife, one morning at breakfast, I sat across the table from her and she started to cry. And that was when I really became aware of that aspect of it. So anyway, found a neurologist. We live in Indiana half the year and Florida half the year. And found a neurologist in Indiana, wonderful man, still in his care. And we started out with a diagnosis of mild cognitive disorder. There is a amnestic mild cognitive disorder, which is amnesia, forgetfulness. He tended, they don't make specific diagnosis at that stage, and but he called it anestic, induced by the anesthesia. And I've done a lot of reading on that, and it's difficult. I'm sure that there's disagreements amongst the doctors as to whether or not that is a cause, but in my mind, I think it certainly was. But in any event, that's when I really started continuous care, and I received the cognitive tests that they give you every time you go to see your neurologist, and I did fine on that. And in the course of time, that aspect, that intense loss of cognitive abilities was gone, and I would say that I really recovered, but I continued to go for 6 months evaluation. And I did, he put me on Aricept right away, and Zoloft, and I stayed on that for about a year and a half, not quite a year and a half, and I started to have side effects from the Aricept. He changed me to an Exelon patch, which is what I'm taking now, and I've been on the Exelon patch, I guess, probably for about 2 years. What do you think?
About 8 years.
Yeah. And I'm doing well. But my condition is progressing very slowly, but I am aware of it, and it is to the point now where I become initially, once I got over the lack of concentration and focus aspect, I was just forgetting things. And the forgetfulness is really my issue now. I do not have any life skills problems yet. But it's an interesting journey because Alzheimer's, you hear about it and it affects the brain, but what you really don't realize until you experience it yourself is that it affects different parts of the brain, and the brain is broken down into all sorts of sections, and each section has its own function. And it starts, I believe, in the frontal lobe, from what I have read, and that's where memory is. And but then it spreads to other parts of the brain, and you lose function progressively. It starts with memory, and really just insignificant things. But where I am now is I cannot remember 15 minutes after I do something, whether I've done it or not. And that is just so very frustrating, and I would say to people that, at least for me, but I would recommend it to other people as well, it's good to think about it and to think about what's happening to you in a very realistic and very honest way, because that's the only way that you can deal with it. And more importantly, I think that's the only way that you can come to peace with it. And I've come to realize when Dr. Farlow first gave me Zoloft, everything was new. It's the first time I'd had the cognitive test. And when he said he was putting me on Aricept and Zoloft, I knew what Aricept was. My mother had taken it many, many years ago. She was in the initial studies, actually. And but Zoloft, I knew what that was, but I objected to Zoloft because, to me, Zoloft is for people who have,
Depression, sadness.
Depression
mental illness.
And such. Yeah, mental illness. Thank you. And so I called him up and I said, I've been thinking about this and I really want to talk about taking the Zoloft because I think that my stress level and my depression level is appropriate to what I'm going through. And I don't feel that I have, mental problems or anything like that. He explained to me that the two react together. And that is so true now. I realize that now because as I look back on things, part of what we have to deal with is that the mind knows that it is not functioning properly. And subconsciously, you are reacting to your problem mentally. And that is stressful. And that makes you angry and makes you aggressive and makes you argumentative. And you don't even realize that you're doing it, and you don't even know why you're doing it, if you even realized that it was happening to you. And that is a tremendous insight because you're the one with the disease, you're the one with the problems, you're the one with the issues and the frustration and the anger and everything else. But you are living with someone, in my case, my wife, my wonderful wife of 47 years, and it's a journey that you take together. It's very much your journey, it's personal, but it impacts the person that you live with. And we've had a wonderful marriage, and we've dealt with all of our problems over the years and life stresses, but this one is unique. And I have to tell you that one of the realizations that I've come to recently is I now realize that, I could drop dead in a minute, but barring something like that happening, I now realize that I have a terminal disease. And it is a long journey. I dare say it's going to be difficult every step of the way, but you have to wrestle with your feelings about it. You can become depressed. You can become weak mentally, emotionally. It can become a crutch, and my feeling is, and I've said this from the very beginning when I first told my children, that I want to do this with as much grace and style as I possibly can. And in order to do that, I really think you have to accept where you're at, and you have to think about it.
Something you talked about in our group, though, a lot, though, is the communication between you and your wife, and how important it is that you share this together and be open and honest about it. Can you touch on that for a minute?
Yeah. We have not had many crises in our lives, in our married life. But this clearly is very significant. And I think that talking is therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
It really is therapeutic. And it is something that you don't realize, but you need to be open about it. And I have not advertised it to everybody, but to close friends and associates. I let them know. And everyone is supportive of you. Absolutely everyone is supportive of you. I have not found a single person who is not supportive. Some people, I think, there is a little bit of a difference in the relationship that you sense, but no one in any way is offensive. So I really think that openness and discussion, particularly with the people who are around you, and who are being impacted by it, the people that you need in your life, who love you and care for you, it's very important for you, and I dare say it's very important for them as well. And it's not easy. I've not been sick in my life, so I've never had to deal with it before. But I think that it's part of the acceptance process, and it makes you think about it, and it's good to think about it, and it's good to be aware, because the more aware you are of the situation, the more you're capable of dealing with it.
And something you're doing, Brian, is you're journaling your journey.
I am. Yeah.
He's journaling the whole journey, and that's
Yeah.
coming from his legal background. Writing briefs and doing that, you're keeping track
Yeah.
of what's going on.
The other thing that I would say to people about being a lawyer, that's why I raised it before, as I look back on this journey now, I realize that I first had cognitive issues. I'm now 70 years of age. I was aware of cognitive issues when I was 56 years of age, and I was aware of it in the practice of law. I didn't have the grasp of my files the way that I did. And it turned out that I retired at that time, not because I had Alzheimer's, but I'm sure that if I had continued to practice, there would have been parts of my practice that I no longer would have been responsible to have continued with, because I did some litigation work, and you have to have the ability to keep that file in your mind at every moment, and I was losing that possibility. And it's also interesting that I kind of thought to myself back then, well, maybe I ought to go to see a doctor. I just didn't get around to it. There was no intensity to it at that point. And then I retired. And really, I didn't have that need for the mental acuity that I had previously. So I didn't do anything about it. I didn't notice it anymore until the surgery of several years ago. So I really think it's important to be honest with yourself and don't wait.
Words to live by. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll follow Brian's journey. And have a great day.
Yep. Thanks.